realistically what the options are of what could happen. Your birth parent is not wavering. You feel like you're kind of in the clear, and then you get that call.
Yep.
Talk to us about really the traumatic moment of getting that call from your caseworker. And how far into it you were.
Yeah, so we brought the baby home on a Sunday. Sunday, so we had, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there was just a lot of just like bonding, hanging around. I think by the time Wednesday rolled around, I was like, you know what, I think I'm comfortable enough now that like, if you need to get out of the house for like 5 seconds, go to the gym, whatever, take a little bit of time. We're both like sleep deprived. I'm good here for 2 hours or whatever, take some space. And then the next day, I did the same thing where I went to the gym, just like get a little bit of workout in.
Yeah.
And I was at the gym. We were like kind of getting together our first set of like pictures and letter to send to birth mom. And then we get the text from Sheila, hey guys, call me, it's not good. Immediately, like because of the classes and because you've just like, talking about all these potential outcomes, that's
and that's not how Sheila would typically reach out to us.
No. Yeah. And then I called her on the way home from the gym. I think I was on the speakerphone. She was like, are you driving? I was like, yeah. She's like, don't do that. Can you pull over? So I pulled over, and it was just like, I don't even know what it was. It was just like tears. I think I probably just blacked out, honestly.
Yeah.
It was blackout experience. It was heart sink, devastating. Like, is this actually happening? You're kind of in this fog for a few minutes.
And there's
surreal.
No real time to react, right? So it's like basically like, hey, she's on her way. We need you to bring her back to the office. And I'm like, well, like, do we get like, how much time do we get? And she's like, I think it was like within the hour. So it was like, okay, so out of all of this, then like everything that you thought of and, dreamed and you thought that, you'd want to happen just kind of just like disappears in like one text message.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of ripped away.
Yeah. Very suddenly.
Yeah. And I do think that we need to create a space for those emotions, even though we'll talk about kind of the bigger picture of all this and the birth parent's right to choose and all that, which I know you guys are very much in support of.
Yep.
But I do think we need to hold a space for the reality of getting that call and what that feels like, even when you've had all the preparation and you've checked the right boxes, and it really does sound like you guys did as much as you could to prepare for this potentially happening. But it all goes out the window when you get that text, when you get that call, when you're in that moment of, okay, I now have to bring this baby back that was potentially going to be ours forever. And I do want to share, because folks may be wondering, like, procedurally, how does that work? Why did they only have an hour to bring the baby back? There's no kind of right way or one way of handling a disruption. As social workers, we kind of have to evaluate the case, decide what's the most beneficial first and foremost for the child, what's in the best interest and safety of the child, and then we have to bring into play the birth parent and the adoptive parents, where everyone is, what makes most sense. But traditionally, we do try to ask the adoptive family what their preferences are. Sometimes families want to immediately let go and bring child back and kind of put everything in the car and just bring it. Other families want to take the night to kind of say their goodbyes to that child. Again, that's not always an option, just based off of the circumstances of the situation, but we do try to handle it to the best of our ability in keeping everyone as comfortable as possible, knowing what you guys are going through. And it's really hard. I will tell you that even as social workers, it's the worst part to our job, is to make that phone call. And specifically for your social worker, I just had to keep reminding her, like, you are the structural foundation to all of this, and you have to kind of put emotions aside and safeguard your family as much as you can and remind them of the bigger picture of where this is going to one day lead to. And this is unfortunately a hurdle in the journey of what's potentially going to happen down the road. But it's hard, really hard. And we sometimes need to take a pause and get some space from this as workers here because of the trauma involved with it.
You have another AFTH video out there on like the impact of social workers, and that's the first one that we found several days after this, like when we were kind of like coming off of our like emotions. We found that, and watching that, I think we even sent it to a few family members that were just like, that was like the one video that I thought was so impactful, because it's like, you're obviously the person who is physically impacted by this loss, but there's a lot of emotional loss that's like going around the entire agency. And like humanizing that and hearing other social worker stories was like really awesome.
I think it just helped us because there's a wave of emotions, right, and different stages you go through. And the initial one for us was, well, sadness and devastation, obviously, which led to, you know, if we're being honest, anger towards birth mom, right? I think that was an honest reaction to be how could she have not let us know this, or wavering, you know, how could she string us along, kind of words we were saying, and then maybe some anger towards the agency as well, right? As how could nobody have caught this or think that there was a red flag? And I think it took us a couple days and we found that video on the birth mom's perspective. I think it really helped us truly understand the process. We know that this is a process we signed up for, and this is part of it. And we, you know, understanding that it's not an easy decision for birth mom either, and really being in her shoes or the birth family's shoes as well, I think gave us a better perspective on it and helped us kind of get through the stages of that grief and really come around.
Yeah, and I think, again, very honest and vulnerable what you're saying, because that is the truth. And it takes like a full circle moment when you're going through a disruption, in my opinion. And as the outsider, as the social worker, or as the agency kind of witnessing what's going on, everything you just described is hopefully the pattern that we're envisioning. Everyone experiences it differently. Sometimes families immediately want to go back into the books to be shown for other situations. Sometimes they want to take a pause, and we've had families take a pause for months because it just was that hard on them, kind of made them reevaluate, are we willing to take another risk of potential placement and it not going through. But the fact that you were able to come full circle and recognize it's not the birth mom's fault necessarily, right? You're not angry at her in the bigger picture of things. You were angry in the moment because of what was being taken from you, but you were able to kind of recognize what she was going through and the decision that she had to make over those 30 days. And you ultimately would not want to be placed with a child that she did not want to be placed with you.
No. And it does take, like, I will reiterate that. I mean, it took a solid like 24 to 48 hours before you like wrapped your head around that. And it took a lot of just like Googling like other people's stories, maybe not like as part of like this agency, but just like YouTubing like what is an give me an example of what an adoption's meant to somebody else, just so I can see what somebody else went through. But once those kind of emotions just like settle a little bit and like, the tears go away, then you can like put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And I think that for me was a really powerful moment in being like, okay, now you're right. Now I know what it feels like to have to like go through this process from a birth mom's perspective. That sucks. So it just kind of like it makes you just appreciate and understand the entire process from like front to end just so much more like deeply.
And how layered it is. It's just not so easy and quick and like final and like, okay, the dynamics of here's this person who gave birth, plopping her baby, giving it to you, and everybody's goodbye. Like, it just doesn't work that way.
And you learn about it, you go through the classes, you go through all that stuff, and you know it's a possibility, but when it actually happens, it's like, it's real, right? And you don't really anticipate that happening. And when it does, it's like, okay, this is what we learned about. Now we're actually going to apply what we learned here.
Totally. Well, and even from the agency's standpoint, having to make that call to you is, again, one of the most difficult parts to our job. And it's beyond what you want to do as an employee here, right? Because we're all about building families. But in the same sense, if you ever have had to counsel a birth parent post-placement 5-10 years that regretted their decision because of something that happened, right? Because there's things that have happened, that's also not an easy thing to do. So knowing that we work with clients who truly want this for their child, they may be sad at times, they may feel like I wish I could have made it work, but they don't regret their decision, because there's a difference between regretting versus being sad, right? That part, I think, is what allows us to make those calls. Even though they're hard, we know that you will eventually be able to understand it and hopefully be rematched, replaced, and have your forever child. But we don't want a birth parent to participate in this if this is not truly what they want for their child. So you experience the disruption, we replaced child back, you came into the office, we safely replaced child back with the birth family. Talk to us about what those first couple of weeks after that were like for you when you decided to come back into the books, because there's no strict policy. You can come back in whenever you're ready. And we do have supportive services in terms of like other families who have been disrupted, support groups, AFTHtv episodes as they shared. But what pushed you to be like, okay, we're ready to go back in now and be shown for other situations?
So we took a week and a half off after. So we actually initially had a vacation planned during that time. We obviously canceled it when we got placed. We had already taken time off for paternity leave. So we were like, let's just take this time off. We were able to get away a little bit, which actually helped us refocus, just get out of your everyday scenarios, situations. We were able to get away for a week and a half. I think in the moment we were like, we're not ready to go back in the books. Like, we need a break from this. We know that time is going to heal this, but how much time is that going to be? We got out for about a week and a half. We're able to just lean on each other and talk to each other, get all of those emotions out, and lean on your partner. I think is the most important part of this, because that's the only person that's really going through this with you and can truly understand what you're feeling. And that's really all it took for us was get away of your everyday situations. We came back 2 weeks later, and we came back, talked with Sheila, had a regroup, how are we feeling, and we were ready. I think we took the time we needed. I think it's different for different people. We were in our situation, we had baby for 5 days, so we're fortunate that it wasn't 25 days, 27 days, closer to that 30. We might have been a longer period where we needed that time to kind of get over that. But for us, it was really getting out of our everyday scenarios.
Sure. Yeah. How about for you?
Lean on your partner a lot. That's what I think each of us did. If you're like me and you're not used to seeing your partner cry, get over that, because they will, if they're human. A lot of emotions. You're gonna do a lot of talking and just like talking and trying to get out of your head like this idea of like what should have been, because like should is like an awful word in general in life. Don't ever like have expectations for what should happen, because very 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 infrequently do they like materialize. So we just tried to say, this wasn't meant to happen. This wasn't this will happen again. Just like be excited for the possibilities of the future. Get your emotions out for sure. Eat garbage for a few days, and then you just gotta pick yourself back up and get back in the books, which is easier said than done for sure.
And I say also surround yourself with people who understand the process and support the process. So you might be in situations where family members or close friends maybe don't understand. We had some family members that, of course, they felt sad, and maybe they still had the anger for birth mom while we were past that. And others maybe felt what we were feeling and understood the process. So I would say you might have people in your life that do not fully understand it, and it's important to kind of surround yourself with the people that do, to really help you kind of get to that next level, because not everybody's going to understand it. I don't think it might take different amounts of time for different people.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because here you are going through the reflection and processing of everything, but then recognizing that not everybody's at the same pace. Right? Because these people you're talking about care and love you guys, and they're probably only saying these things out of their love and support for you, because they don't fully understand. They haven't been on this journey, the same journey as you have been. So recognizing that and maybe having grace for it, or creating some sort of healthy boundary at times that may be necessary too, for folks who may have experienced that and are trying to figure out how to kind of get back over the hump and move forward.
Yeah, and I would just say, like, be prepared to have to, a disruption is like, it's hard for like the obvious reason of, you're losing something physical, right? But then you kind of also like get to this point where it's like, okay, you have certain family members who might still be kind of like in the anger stage when you're like well past, like you said. And then it's like, oh, well then I know I struggle with like, did we not do a good enough job of like educating our closest family members on like what this is like? And I'm like, am I ready for this then? Or, you can kind of go through a little bit of like self-doubt with like, should I have done more to like talk to like, a parent or a sibling who is like mad and they're calling you and they're like, I can't believe this happened. You're like, no, we're good.
I think we took all the right steps in informing and educating people, but I think to your point, maybe they're not as engrossed in the program
That's probably
as we
part
are.
of it. That's definitely part of it.
But sorry.
But it's still like something that I wasn't prepared to have these conversations of walking other people back the same way that I've had to walk myself back. And it gets frustrating, and that will kind of like keep you like a little bit more deep into what you've just lost than you would have felt without that. I think dealing with loved ones is probably the second biggest challenge outside of even dealing with like each other.
Sure.
Because I can lean on you for anything. Like I can just say whatever I want.
Of course, yeah.
But
I'd say also the peripheral people were also a challenge. So for anybody going through this process, it's hard to, for work, right? For coworkers, it's hard to hide something like this, right? I was planning on taking off for 6 weeks, so I'm not just gonna leave work for 6 weeks. So there were people in my closer circle, my team, that knew what was going on, knew that it was a possibility, but maybe wasn't really educating them as much on the situation because they're not close family, they're not close friends. And when this happened and we got placed, then a larger group of people were chipping in for a gift, and the whole office knew what was going on. And then, 4 days later, this happens. I don't know who knows what now at this point. They're not informed that we got disrupted. So I come back to work 2 weeks later. I'm still correcting people that, hey, they didn't even know I was going through the adoption process. So having to step that back each time, or just be cautious on even telling people that are not close to you, but you have to tell, like coworkers, what the reality could be, because that can be a challenge, because you get reminded weeks later that they may know and you don't know that they know.
Sure.
It's a great point. And again, I think you could be as prepared and conscious of this as you can be, but there's going to be moments that just fall through the cracks in terms of just life, and that's just the way it processes and how it happens. But it sounds like you guys handled it, in my opinion, to the best of your ability in terms of what we see and what has worked for families. I think you're in a really healthy place. You were in a healthy place when you decided to come back into the books, which is really important for us here at the agency. We want to make sure our families have dealt with the grief and the loss that's experienced in a disruption before you're ready to kind of embark on the next chapter of being rematched. So fast forward to now, you guys are rematched, not placed yet. Baby has not been born yet. Talk to us about what that experience has been like to be rematched, and maybe some of the feelings associated with what's currently happening based off of what you've been through.
Go for it.
So we're excited, obviously, that we got matched again. It's a different feeling the second time around, and it's not in a negative way or a bad way. I think we are allowing ourselves to be excited, but being more conscious about what the possibility could be. Now, this situation, we have a longer runway. The baby's not born until the end, or due until the end of the year, so we have plenty of time to think about the possibilities. But I think we're feeling good about it. We're not overly excited. We're still telling the people close to us about the situation. I think that gives them more preparedness for what could happen. But I think what's important is we're still allowing ourselves to be excited about this situation, with some precaution. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm overly excited. I don't know why you said that. I'm very excited. I will say, like, a serious conversation that we had to have with each other when this happened again was like, I think your first instinct, especially like what we just talked about with like family members, is like, let's just like not tell anybody for a while, right? And then it's like, okay, think about it for a second. That doesn't really make sense, because like these are your parents, these are your siblings again, these are aunts and uncles who love you. You would hope that they are in this journey with you. I'm not going to not let myself, don't let yourself not be excited and feel like you can't share with the people that like you love the most, because you're afraid of disappointing them again, or because, maybe it was like embarrassing the last time, to have to like, kind of like take this all back from people. Let yourself be excited, but just keep up those like same guardrails that you would have the first time, like with like pictures and sharing and announcing and all this. Yeah, very excited.
Yeah, and it's hard. We're putting you on this path again, right? And there's risk, and it's not like we don't want you to enjoy it, but you do have to be cautious. And I think that's true whether you've experienced a disruption or not. It's just been hit in your face harder because you guys have experienced what could happen if they change their mind.
And it's hard because you don't want that to be the forefront of every
Right.
situation.
Right.
When it's 10% of the time, 8% of the time, right? It's tough because you don't want that to be a scare all the time for every situation, because it is a smaller percentage that it happens. But it's important to be prepared and know that it's a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've had many discussions with their social worker Sheila of just the prepping that's happening right now, and even for her, she's trying to safeguard you as much as she can because she's very protective of you because you have experienced a disruption. And I have to remind her of it's okay. This is still a part of the process. You have to kind of let them go a little more. It's like a mama bear, right? Like she wants to hold you guys and not have you experience the pain. But it's just a part of the risk, right? And disruptions happen on average 6 to 9% of the time here at the agency, and that seems like a low number. But as these guys have shared, when it happens to you, it just hits. And we can be as protective as we can be. But I think, in my opinion, another option of handling it is to just be as aware as you can be, right? Go into it being as cautious and understanding and respectful of the process. I think revocation period, in my opinion, for a birth parent to have the ability to change their mind is still crucial, even if you've experienced a disruption, because knowing that they have those 14 days or those 30 days, depending on what state you're working with, bigger picture allows you to know that you've been placed with a child that was truly meant to be a part of your family. So I'm hopeful that doesn't go too far from you as you're navigating this next possibility of placement. Any other thoughts or things you want people to really know about the realities of experiencing a disruption? Any advice you have, or just something you want to kind of get off your experience for people to hear?
I think for me, looking at this the next time around, one thing that Sheila said to us in the moment was I don't want to hear it, but in the moment was, at least now you're prepared for this, and how to parent a child. And in the moment was I don't want to hear that this is being ripped away from me, but that is something that has really stuck with me. I think there was a lot of anxiety leading into it, obviously. I think when we were placed with the baby for the first 4 days, we realized we were ready for this. This is something that we're excited and ready for. So I think having that, if that happens to anybody out there, disruption, know that it's going to be better the second time around, because you're prepared. Even though it's been maybe 4 days, 10 days, 2 days, you've already got through that first hurdle, and it's going to be better the next time around, or we're hoping it's better the next time around.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot, just kind of because I remember we got home from having to surrender the child to the agency, and I got home and it was just can you believe Sheila said that? At least it's that's the last thing you want to hear. Mm-hmm. And then 48 hours later you're she was kind of right? That's when everything kind of starts to soften and you kind of lose that anger.
Yeah.
For me, another thing that we've talked about a lot was this process, again, there's so many layers to it, there's so many scenarios, there's so many outcomes that could happen. It's a little bit of it's not a stretch, but I feel now that I've had this happen to me, I've actually experienced the entire thing that not everybody gets to experience. And while I wish it didn't happen, the fact that it did happen, I have another experience that I can use as I kind of move forward in this placement, or any future placement now, where it's I know that I can handle all of the ifs and whats that could happen throughout this, because there's going to be a lot of them. It's an emotional roller coaster. So yeah, it's just kind of cool being able to at least now look back now that everything's settled and just be I got the full picture.
It's all part of the journey. I think we can truly understand that statement now.
Yeah. So again, while I don't wish that on anybody, you can glean something out of it.
Yeah.
Well, and again, this may not be what you want to hear in this moment, but I will say to you, in my experience of working with disrupted families, I actually think it makes them stronger parents.
I agree.
And I truly mean that. And I never want to see people go through pain, but I have found that disrupted families, as challenging as it may be and emotional as it may be, makes you a stronger adoptive parent through open adoption, stronger parent in general, because the challenges that come about through disruptions build you as a couple, if you are a couple, or just as a human in general. It kind of gets you prepared for parenting, because parenting has a lot of unknowns, a lot of risks. It allows you to be a little more flexible, because you can no longer be rigid and like, this is what I'm asking for, this is what I'm getting, and everything is just perfect. It just doesn't always work that way. So bigger picture, whether it's 3 months from now, 4 years from now, whatever it may be, I'm hopeful that this experience will help mold you as humans and as parents, and it will stay with you in a positive way, is the goal.
I think it will. I honestly think it will. I think time will tell, but it feels like it will.
You said what I was trying to say about that.
Well, we appreciate you guys. Again, our goal in doing this was for you to hear from folks who have been through it so that you could hear the hard times, not just the good times of adoption. And I think you guys really gave a raw impression of what this experience was like. And I will just say, from a agency standpoint of knowing like structurally what we try to do here at the agency and preparing and building our families, you guys really did all the right moves, if that makes sense. I don't see any spaces of pockets where I'm like, oh, we should have done it that way, or they weren't prepared, or they're saying the wrong thing. Like, you guys hit on every target of what we try to do as social workers in preparing you, and then ultimately having you become reactivated in our books to be rematched. And I'm really proud of that work from everybody, from you guys first and foremost, and the caseworkers that were involved in your situation. And not to say that everything was perfect, I mean, always room for movement and whatever, but like, this was handled appropriately, in my opinion, for the most part.
I agree, and I think that the biggest testament to it being handled correctly is the fact that like it only took like 2 weeks for us to like turn around and be like, you know what, we're all good here. It ended up being, it took several months to get to the point where I'm like, oh, that was a positive experience, but because it wasn't necessarily positive, but in the long term, it was a beneficial thing to have experienced.
Absolutely.
And hopefully this is helpful for others who have gone through this or will go through this and are viewing this. This is kind of why we wanted to come here, because after we had that disruption, there wasn't a lot of content out there on this. So for those who are experiencing this, we've been through it, and you can get to the other side. So.
Well, thank you. I know that this will go a long way, and the folks on this call, know that there is light at the end of that tunnel. You guys are living proof of that. We are all cheering you on and hoping that things go well for you.
Thank you.
But I do appreciate you being realistic of whether or not this situation is it or not. It may not be, right? We don't know. But we are hopeful that it will be for you, because we're excited to see you as parents, and I think you're going to be wonderful. So thank you very much. We appreciate you. Continue to tune in to future episodes, and thank you for all of your support.